In my opinion, you should absolutely redo your estate plan once your spouse receives Medicaid eligibility. Once your spouse receives Medicaid eligibility, they are going to be eligible for medical assistance for the rest of their life. But we also have to understand how property works and how property can transfer as a result of passing, because not everything is controlled by your last will and testament. The only thing controlled by your last will and testament are individually held assets. So if you still have an account jointly held with your spouse and you pass away, by operation of law, your spouse now owns that checking account. So if you pass away prior to your spouse that has already achieved Medicaid eligibility, you could very quickly get them kicked back off of Medicaid, and then we would have to reapply. Additionally, we go look at each asset, how you own it, and how it might transfer at the time of death. For example, assets such as an IRA or a 401k or life insurance, they can have what we call a pay-on-death designation. So when you pass away, by contract law, that pay-on-death designation is going to designate who gets that asset. And if you've not redone your estate planning process and not changed who those designated beneficiaries are, when you pass away, instead of leaving assets to your kids or the grandkids, you might inadvertently transfer all of the protected assets back to your spouse that's already in a nursing home. And if they receive assets and they're on Medicaid, they're going to be kicked off of Medicaid until we reapply and spend the assets back down again. So we look at every admission to the nursing home as a legal problem. And part of that is planning for the longevity of the healthy spouse in the community. But if that healthy spouse in the community passes away before the applicant that's in the nursing home, we don't want assets to revert back to that applicant that's already on Medicaid. So it's a process of redoing the deed, making sure that that deed is now owned individually by the healthy spouse in the community. Individually owned assets are going to be controlled by the last will and testament. So oftentimes we're redoing the last will and testament that says not everything to my spouse, but most everything to my kids. And then lining up with the financial advisor to verify who are the designated beneficiaries on the investments and the life insurance and so on and so forth, and making sure that we look at each asset individually to say that if I pass away as a healthy spouse, let's make sure that we can maintain eligibility and maximize the assets that are going to be heading to our beneficiaries. It's a team effort. The attorney needs to be involved, the family needs to be involved, and oftentimes the financial advisor is just as important as the attorney in that process. But absolutely, if your spouse goes into the nursing home, you absolutely have to have a conversation about redoing your estate plan, understanding how ownership works, and taking the steps with your family and with your professionals to make sure that we're getting the best financial result for your family and for your loved ones.